Echoplex Media, boo.
I'm white, and I've got everything I need. No one clutches their purses when they're in a room alone with me. And I can drive for any neighborhood I please at any hour, and the police don't do a thing. So if I see a penny on the ground, I leave it alone and fucking flip it. I'm a straight white male in America. I've got everything I need. I'm a guy getting paid more than a girl with a degree. And I can walk down the streets after dark, no one wants to rape me. And I can get a girl pregnant and just as easily flee. Just like my straight white male dad did to me. So if I see a penny on the ground, I leave it alone and fucking flip it. I'm a straight white male in America. I've got all the luck I need. I've got a pile of broken mirrors and I'm walking under ladders and I'm spilling tons of salt, but to me that doesn't matter, cause my skin and my gender and my orientation are the best things to have if you live in this nation. I recommend it highly. If I see a penny on the ground, I leave it alone and fucking flip it. I'm a straight white male in America. I've got all the luck I need. Shit's gonna work out for me, cause I'm a straight white male in America. I've got all the luck I need.
Welcome, live viewers, and welcome people on the podcast. This is the Intellectual Dollar Tree. We do the show live right here on Twitch. That's twitch.tv/Echoplex Media. That's every Wednesday at 7 p.m. Pacific. You can support us at echoplexmedia.com. Click the support tab. Find your favorite way. Obviously, live viewers, bits and subs and gift subs and all that are good, but the split on that sucks. So if you found another way to support us, the split on that's usually better. Plus, sometimes you get a shirt. I'm Producer Dave, and in addition to being on Grindr, you're probably going to find me on the r/Scientology subreddit, because there's a pretty nasty article coming out the day that this podcast comes out. So check the r/Scientology subreddit and see if people be talking about me.
And I am HK Perrin. You can find me on Mastodon at hperrin at port87.social.
Fantastic. So I was looking for something a little new, something we haven't really, not a subject matter we haven't covered, but I'm like, we need to find some new people. So I found this YouTube channel called The Radical Center.
Okay.
Do you know what fishhook theory is?
No, I don't.
Do you know what horseshoe theory is?
Yes.
It's like imagine that for fishhook, where you go from left to right, and then the hook starts coming around and points back to the center.
Oh, okay.
I think this is going to be fishhook theory. So this is called Deprogramming, Understanding Woke as a Belief System and Behavior System with Carrie Smith. This kind of harkens back to that episode of that ex-Scientologist, Chris Shelton, we watched when he went on trigonometry and started talking about social justice like it was a cult. So I thought maybe this would be another good piece of content in that sort of sphere to take a look at. I don't think I've ever seen the Radical Center channel. They have 20,000 subscribers, so we're not punching up as much as we usually do here, but they do have a lot more subscribers than we do on YouTube, and yeah. Also, we cracked 5,000 followers on Twitch just a couple days ago, so that's pretty cool.
Nice.
Anyway. On to this piece of content. We've never seen these people before, so let's try to be especially focused on what the fuck they're saying, because we've never seen them before.
Today, I'm speaking with Carrie Smith, and Carrie, you're the host of the Deprogrammed podcast. And as I was just about to say to you before I hit record, this is a bit of a different, sort of a departure for me, because most of the people that I've spoken with have reached out to me to talk with me on this whatever this is, this YouTube channel podcast thing. And I actually reached out to you. So I'm really happy to be
I like her hat.
talking to you. I found your podcast, Unsafe Space, that you were doing with Carter Laren at the time.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess, was it 2019 or 2020 when you guys were doing that?
We started it the end of 2018. So
Okay.
yeah, but we were
Okay.
doing it up until 2021, I believe, or 2022, 2021.
Well, I found it. You guys were already underway. And so there had been,
It's
was
weird to me that
somewhat established.
2019 was 5 years ago.
I was in graduate school and I was trying to figure out what the heck all this woke stuff was. I didn't have a language for it, really. I couldn't articulate what I was experiencing. And I just knew that
this
there
is
was
gonna be
something
track.
ideological that was happening that was changing the way people were talking and thinking. And it was like, it felt very, very totalizing and very strange to me. And I had not experienced that really previously. And
So she's experiencing the evolution of language and concepts in a university, and she's like, "What the fuck is going on?" It's like, ma'am, ma'am, a university is a place where language and concepts evolve. It's one of the things you do there. She's like, "I just didn't understand it. I don't know. I never really had my ideas challenged before by any concepts that were new to me. I just kind of knew everything before. Now I don't know about this thing. This is going to be fucking insufferable. I can already tell. I'm going to get like really annoyed with this really fast."
I found you guys about the same time I found Critical Therapy Antidote, which is a really, I don't know if you're aware of who they are, but
I'm not, but that's a great name.
The names of these shows
Yeah.
are
It's
pretty
a group-
fucking wild.
Critical Therapy Antidote. I think maybe she means Critical Theory Antidote. Maybe she just misspoke. But maybe there's a show called, people should be writing these down. We're looking for new people to fucking cover on the Intellectual Dollar Tree, and this might be rife with name drops that we could use.
Group that was founded by Val Thomas in the UK and another counselor who was in the US. And then it started to gather steam. Val wrote this wonderful piece for New Discourses that I found. And it just really articulated what I was experiencing and why I thought it was so wrong in the therapy field. And I was a graduate student in mental health counseling at the time. But you and Carter also really helped to articulate that. And as I watched and listened to you guys, you went through the knitting thing that happened with the knitting community. And a girlfriend of mine is she's my best
What
friend.
happened?
So she's
Was there
the
drama in the knitting community?
We can look into that next week if you want.
Yeah. I want to know about the knitting drama.
I maybe will. Well, I don't know. You'll have to. If you really want to know. If you really want to know about it, you'll have to get me some content about that because I don't have time for that shit.
an indie yarn dyer who was watching this happen also at the same time. And
Yeah.
it was really, it was profoundly helpful to have people dissecting this and actually describing what was going on. And I was really grateful for the work that you guys were doing. And so I'm excited to speak with you because I think that you have kind of an interest.
Oh, nothing changes. Isn't it great that we're having this conversation, part of the conversation at 2 minutes and 30 seconds in?
Yeah, every time.
Every time. It's so common. We don't even have it on the IDW bingo card. That's how common it is. We should make that the free space.
You're an
Yep.
early comer to this awakening that a lot of people have been going through. So thank you so much for speaking with me today.
Oh, well, thank you for having me. And it's funny, it takes me back to that time period you're talking about. And when you say early to an awakening, it makes it kind of, I necessarily have to contrast where we're at today and look at how much ground we've taken, I think.
Yeah.
People who are, whatever you want to call us, reality based. I heard that based came from reality based. So I like,
Oh no, based came from Oakland, you fucking dumbass. It came out as a lot of good American slang does. It came out of the hip hop community in either Oakland or Los Angeles, and it did not come from reality based. I don't know the etymology of it, but I just based on where it came from. Oakland, the kind of Oakland, Berkeley, like hip hop scene probably didn't come from reality based
people, and there are more people waking up all the time. And it's not people on the right. That's the common misconception is that, oh, this is a right left thing. It's not. My husband is a musician, and I got to go with him to some of his shows in Europe last year. We were there for 5 weeks. It was amazing. But Amsterdam in particular was sort of a reminder that I needed that base doesn't mean right left, because even we can get pulled into that dichotomy sometimes. And I met all these people in Amsterdam who are in this left progressive artist hippie kind of community, musicians, artists, who are all based and they're progressives and they're completely awake. They've had, for a lot of them, they woke up during COVID, the COVID restrictions in their country, but for others it was seeing what's happening to the farmers there in the Netherlands. And that was a good reminder to me that even I sometimes can get sucked into this right left crap, and that's not what it is. And so I love it when I meet people who are either still on the left or they're leaving the woke part of the left, but they're still progressives, because I'm like, yes, it's not a right left thing. You are evidence, you yourself, it's just about being awake to the things that are happening in the world.
Wait a minute. This kind of, we've heard this before, not in this context, right? But it's like, oh, people are waking up to this. This reminds me of the chemtrails people.
Yep. Yeah. Also, she's saying she loves meeting people on the left who agree with her, because she says, okay, it's not a left-right thing. Well, that to me indicates that, like, if you meet a whole lot more people on one side than the other that agree with you, you just, like, that is a right-leaning thing, right?
Well, I don't know. I because there's the other thing could be that, like, she's at an after party for a fucking concert or whatever, and she's talking about this weird shit, and maybe the people, if she's in the Netherlands, maybe, like, a lot of people there do speak English, but English would likely be their second language, and maybe they fucking aren't even sure what she's saying and don't really want to fucking argue with her because everybody's on Molly. Like, who, you know what I'm saying? Like, there's like things you talk about at an after party and things that you, little conversation, little things that you're like, oh yeah, sure, whatever. What'd you think of the second band? Like,
to me, it sounds like an anti-abortionist, someone who's against abortion rights, saying, oh, I love meeting people on the left who are anti-abortion because it means it's not a left-right thing. Like, no, that's very clearly a left-right thing. There just are some people on the left who are anti-abortion. Like, sure. It's not 100% a left-right thing, but like nothing is.
But I like I said before, I also just like wonder about like the context of these conversations. Like, do you know what I'm saying? Like, most people actually like just don't want to argue with you most of the time at most places, right? Like, I think that that plays into like her story to like a larger degree than a lot of people would think. I just can't imagine like getting into an argument about whatever woke is at a fucking concert.
Yeah.
Or like the after party or whatever. I feel like it's the wrong place. And I feel like people are going to like go along to get along and hope that you shut up and talk about something else.
Especially if you're like the wife of one of the band members.
Right. Or, or the husband of, or even the best friend of one of the band members. It doesn't really matter. And like, yeah, it's just not the time and not the place. And again, like, the other thing that's missing from this is like, in that society, right? She's like, oh, these people are into free healthcare and, they like drugs are legal and stuff. It's like, well, you think of those things as like liberal things here in the United States, but over there, that's just government policy, longstanding government policy. And like, I think probably the conservative people over there are probably fine with the free weed and the free healthcare because it's just like a fact of their life. So you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. She's like missing, like, it just seems like all the context, the entire context of where she is, who she's talking to and stuff is just removed from this. And she's like, oh, I'm in the Netherlands and these are the progressive people. And it's like, well, they just have different society and the conservatives are fighting a different battle there than the conservatives here are probably. And so they may agree with you about some of the, what she might believe to be the, the overreaches of what they're referring to as the woke left. But then again, like being in favor of free healthcare or legal drugs or whatever, I'm not sure those are seen as like culture war or like political debates over there, because it's just the status quo. It's like the it's just what's going on, and people seem to like it. So like, I think she's just like, she may not be understanding that either she was in a group of conservative people, or that the context of where she was at was such that nobody wanted to argue with her.
Yeah.
This, in particular, this dangerous ideology that I used to be wrapped up in.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's a really good point. I mean, it isn't a right-left thing. And that's been an interesting process for me in engaging with this, I don't know, it's a series of issues. So it's not just one issue, but I guess this whole cultural phenomenon, as I've been having these kind of public conversations,
Did I miss it, or did they actually talk about like what the actual issue is other than just woke?
Well, it's interesting. They're talking about cults and cult deprogramming, but they're totally using in-group language here, right? Where they're assuming essentially that the people know exactly what they're talking about, which is interesting, because that's a lot of what goes on in cults and control groups, is that in-group language is used to signal the fact that you're part of the in-group. Actually,
yeah, I mean, a lot of people mean a lot of different things by woke. So, like, what exactly do they mean by it?
It's all in-group talk, dude. But they're, you know, this lady is probably going to claim to have some expertise about cults and control groups as they use in-group nomenclature and don't explain what they're talking about.
I would have always considered myself to be a liberal. I, at one point, would have considered myself to be very far left, and did. And then I realized what that actually is, and realized that, no, that doesn't represent me. And so when I made this channel, I named it the Radical Center, because it was kind of an ironic name, because it shouldn't be radical to be in the center, but right now it feels that.
Oh, you're the first one who ever came up with that idea. Good job. Nobody ever get the fuck out of here. Like, come on.
Everything is pulling us to the polls.
Clever.
So much. And as I've been doing these conversations and having these, a lot of the feedback I get does come from the right, and it's critical of the people who are speaking on this channel.
I mean, I do feel like on some issues, their being in the center is definitely radical.
Right, but that's, I don't want to like go over, like, I don't like, there are other times and places on this channel where we talk about like left, right stuff. I try not to do a lot of that on the intellectual Dollar Tree.
Okay, but
go ahead, I guess.
Well, what I mean is, like, it depends on the issue.
Sure.
That they're still stuck in a leftist paradigm or a liberal paradigm. And I have a lot of thoughts about that. For one thing, it's interesting that no matter which, if you try to stay in the center, you're misconstrued by both sides.
Yes.
And the other thing is that I think that
that you do, like what a lot of people do when they say that they're in the center, is that they like just plot out a point in whatever fucking spectrum you want to say there is, say this is my idea, and then they just build a fucking ivory tower there and call it the center. Like, then they go stand on it and look down on everybody else. They're like, oh, look at all these dumb fucking people. It's that clowns to the left of me, jokers to the right idea, except that song wasn't about politics. So, like,
yeah, people in the center oftentimes are just, you know, they're either contrarian or they're actually leaning one way, and they've just decided that they are the center.
And that it makes them better and smarter and more thoughtful than you.
I mean, no one's in the center on every issue. You just can't be. It's not reasonable to think that you're like right dead in the center on literally every issue. Some issues are like binary choices. Like, should we razor wire immigrant children to death? That's a binary choice, yes or no. So there is no being in the center on that. You know what I mean?
What if we just do it to some?
Yeah.
But like, also, this is like why I like, if somebody tells me they're like moderate, I like totally like have a lot, like I'm like I think they're probably, you know, they probably have thought some things through, right? Whereas I think claiming you're in the center is almost just a reaction to stuff to try to tell people. It's like a virtue signal, essentially, that you're going to be more reasonable than other people. Whereas people who say that they're moderate, like they're not hiding the ball on you, right? They're going to be like, oh, I'm conservative on some things, but I'm fairly moderate, and I do hold some liberal positions. Those people are cool, right? You may disagree with them or whatever, but at least like you can have some kind of conversation where they're not just like declaring themselves to be the most reasonable person in the room by virtue of their belief, by virtue of the ivory tower they've built at what they have themselves decided the center is.
Yep. And everyone to the left of me is left, and everyone to the right of me is right.
That's right. And they're all idiots. I am the only thoughtful one.
Voices right now, to some extent, are not those that are validating the right, but those that are speaking to the people on the left who still have their eyes closed.
Yes. And that's kind of I went through, I have my own channel now, Deprogrammed. I told you before, my husband made this sign, so I have to show it off.
Awesome.
But one of the things I try to do on this channel, and I have to remind myself of this periodically, is not just to talk to people who are awake to what's going on in the world, based in some way. And I use that term very broadly. Again, it can mean people, it can mean progressives, it does on my
I think she's using that term to mean shares my position.
Yep, for sure.
It can mean people on the right. It can mean Christians, atheists. It's all kinds of people, but I would just say people who are reality based. And sometimes I have to even remind myself of that and say, no, we're doing another episode about, this thing that seems very basic to people who are already awake, but it's not to people who are still in my old ideology.
Yeah, this is like if you take out a couple of the nouns, this is indistinguishable from conspiracy theory talk.
Yep. Also, her idea of being like reality based is kind of ridiculous, because there are things that take a value judgment, period. Like they just do. You can't be reality based on everything because we don't know everything. We don't know all of reality, period. So trying to say that like, oh, I base everything on reality, all of my positions are reality based, is just, that's a really dumb thing to say, and it's untrue.
To be fair, I don't think she made that claim, but it seems implied.
Yeah, she's implying that she is reality based and everyone else is fiction based.
Yeah, again, very Madison Star Moon. Very Madison Star Moon.
Yep.
So this past week, for example, I did an episode about the difference between principles and ideology, like the founding principles, the foundational beliefs in a belief system versus the belief system itself. Because I think that's where, if you can help people to see that, I try to think about what would have helped me when I was in that world. If you can help people to untangle their thoughts and understand the difference between a fundamental truth that's unwavering, that you believe in no matter what, like don't lie, for example, versus a political ideology or a religious ideology.
But wait, that's a stupid one because everybody lies.
A fundamental truth that you believe in is don't lie. That's
right.
A terrible example of a fundamental truth.
Right, like the problem here is she's like splitting a hair that can't even be split, right? Your principles are, I would have a hard time distinguishing and explaining to you what the fuck the difference is between your principles and your ideology. I think your principles are built into your ideology. Like, I think that there may be places where the circles, where the Venn diagram doesn't overlap, but I think it's pretty fucking close to a circle.
Yeah. I mean, the way she's using the words is your principles are the things that you believe are true, and then your ideology is the beliefs that you have because of that. But yeah, like there's not a whole lot of separation between those things.
And I mean,
like there's a big gray area in between them.
And the other thing is, don't lie. You're come on. People lie all the time. You tell harmless lies every day. Everybody lies all the time. Like you can't just always tell the truth. Like, cause then oh,
go ahead.
Then like, if you're, like at a dinner party, they're like, oh, how do you like the wine? And you're like, tastes like shit. You're like, oh, I prefer whites, but this is fine. Thank you so much for the wine. Right. Like that's a lie.
Yeah.
That's a lie by omission. Right. Because first of all, if it was me, I don't like any kind of wine, but I'll just be like, oh, I generally like beer, but this is wonderful. Thank you for wine and thank you for the dinner. Well, this is wonderful is the lie. This isn't wonderful. I fucking don't like your wine. But like where is the value in telling that person that? Next time you go to the dinner party, you're like, hey, can you find out if people there also like beer? I wanted to bring some beer and I wanted to make sure I bring some beer that everybody will like. Then next time you're at dinner, you don't have to drink the wine. You brought beer. Maybe somebody else there doesn't like wine. It's like, oh shit, I really love this stout. Or maybe you give the stout to somebody who maybe didn't like it. And they're like, oh, this is great. Thanks for bringing the stout. They're lying to you now. But you know what? The dinner party goes on and everybody leaves and they're like, oh, I had a good time. And they're all telling the truth because during the process of this dinner party, people told each other little white lies to fucking keep the fucking, it was a little social lubrication. Like, dude, get the fuck out of here.
And to be clear, there are times where you should explicitly lie. Like, if someone asks you straight up, like, hey, do you know anything about a surprise party for me tomorrow? You better fucking lie.
Although by that point, the cat's out of the bag, but it's not your fault.
If they're just trying to probe for information, then like you giving up that information, they might just have a thought and, be probing for information. And if you're the one who confirms their theory, then you're the one who gave it up, right? So you should lie in that scenario.
I think maybe you could modify that to be like, don't lie about anything important.
Well, like as a rule of thumb, you shouldn't lie as a rule of thumb, but like obviously there are exceptions to that.
Yes, not everything is a thumb. But like also like that's not a truth either, right? Do you know what I'm saying? She's like, oh, it's a truth.
Like maybe if your kids or your neighbor's kids ask you if Santa is real, you should probably lie. Because your neighbors will be pretty pissed off if they were, trying to keep their kids believing in Santa.
Right. Oh my God, there's just like so many times when like you should lie. You're right. Like,
yep. Yeah. Like not even just it's okay to lie, but you should. That is the proper moral decision is lying.
Right. Like
in some cases.
Like, why do you want this job? And the answer is probably, well, I mean, nobody really wants to work, but I guess I got to work fucking somewhere. You go, oh, I feel like this is a great opportunity for me to expand my career options and grow within your company.
Yeah. In there, it's like, it's not immoral to not lie, but like for your own benefit, you should lie. And you are expected to lie in that scenario.
Right. Those questions are almost like a test to see how well you're going to be able to tell the little white lies at the office that fucking grease the wheels and fucking act as social lubricant to make everybody not hate each other at the office. Right. Like, oh, did you like
pretty much.
Did you like the muffins? And you don't be like, I smelled the break room and I didn't go in the break room at all. You burned the muffins. You go, oh, I'm not, I'm trying to eat less sugar, so I didn't try one. But I heard somebody talking about them and they said they were great. No, you didn't.
Yeah, like if you never lie, you are probably a bad coworker.
Right. Probably gonna get punched in the face at a bar. Like, you're like, this is my lovely wife, so and so. You're like, she's not lovely. Okay, let's keep going. I thought I was going to matter at this, but this is actually just fucking, this is so far, this is fucking stupid.
Yeah. Or something, and how it's important to keep those principles primary, more important than the ideology. And so, I guess I'm kind of rambling now, but yeah, I try and remember that, like for me, when every once in a while, to keep myself accountable, I'm like, why am I doing this again? What is driving me, and what is my goal? And my goal is to help people leave the woke left, not the left and as a whole, but the woke left.
Was that a little bit of a Freudian slip right there?
I think, yeah. And also, just a few minutes ago, she's like, this stuff isn't even right or left, really. I forget which one of them said it now, because these two people are interchangeable in my mind. Fucking 8 minutes into this fucking thing. Not a very interesting interview when you don't even remember which one of them said which thing. But it could also be that these people are new to us. So,
yeah.
But at this point, they're fairly interchangeable.
She just said, like, her goal is, she corrected, quote unquote, herself, but she just said her goal is to have people leave the left. And yes, she corrected it to the woke left, but like, again, they haven't defined woke.
And how do you leave? She's like, well, you have your core beliefs and your principles. Well, what if your principles, like your core beliefs that she says are supposed to be important, what if those align you for the most part with the woke left? Now is she asking you to abandon your core beliefs and principles to adhere to her ideology? Because that sounds like the opposite of what she was saying just fucking 10 seconds ago or 20 seconds ago in the video.
Especially when she has principles like don't lie. Like that is not a core principle.
That's a lie.
I'm gonna hope that she misspoke when she said that. I'm gonna hope.
And don't lie is just a lie that you're telling yourself, right? Claiming that that's one of your core principles. Then now you're lying to yourself.
Yeah.
That I was in, the cult of ideology I was in. And so I've gotten lots of messages from people who have left. I've also gotten messages, and I get these all the time, from parents or boyfriends of, someone who's started to get into woke. And so there's a lot of, it seems to be a lot of
to
people
get
out there
into
searching for
woke
information on, what's that one magic video or article or book I can give to my loved one to help wake them up. And
the bell curve.
The sad reality is I don't think there's one thing.
Protocols.
So I just try and come at it from all angles and tear it apart as much as I can.
What the fuck does that even mean, though? Starting to get into woke?
This is the, I was going to say this is a mile wide and an inch deep, but this is not even a mile wide.
How do you get into woke?
Like I said, that they're not saying anything.
Is there like a meetup that I could go to? Do we meet like Thursdays, 7 p.m. at the bowling alley? The woke meetup.
I think the woke
Come get into woke.
The woke meetup happens every night on Twitch at twitch.tv/Echoplex Media.
I'm sure. Yeah.
Except Monday night.
I'm sure she would label us as woke.
Oh yeah.
But yeah, I think it's really easy when you start doing this. How long have you been doing your show?
My first video was in October of 2023.
Oh,
wait,
cool.
2022. Yeah.
Oh,
we
wow.
just passed out of 2023. So it's been over a year. Let me
Cool.
think. Yeah.
Congratulations.
Yeah.
That's been a while. Yeah. I think you'll find sometimes it can get easy. And I think people do get pulled into just doing, like with any job or something, where you just sort of are like, okay, this is what I do today. And I think sometimes I notice that people just start talking to people who are already in agreement with them. Mm-hmm. And it's great to acknowledge those people. I mean, we all have like regulars who show up and support a channel and stuff. But I never want to forget who I'm really trying to reach when I talk. And I don't want to be too caustic, because those people won't listen. I mean, on my video yesterday, I had to rein myself in because I wanted to say, how stupid are you?
And she should check out this channel. Some of the things I say on this channel are, my God, maybe not on Wednesdays, but my God, some of the things I say on Sunday night. Oh, shit.
So she wants to be like the very top of that funnel before you get to like even like Dave Rubin further down the funnel. And then like way at the bottom, you've got like Alex Jones and like Tucker Carlson.
Also, like somebody in the chat, I rate Lump in the chat, said, it's kind of conceited to like think that people like in like who have a belief system you don't like or have been subsumed by something similar to a cult. Like I'm like, you know, this is one of the places where I think I know some shit, right? I mean, how long have I been looking into Scientology? And when I make comparisons, say, between like conspiracy communities and cult control groups, I like make very specific comparisons. I don't just say, oh, this is exactly like Scientology, right? Like that's dumb. It's dumb. It's like reductive. It doesn't make any sense. And like, no, a conspiracy community isn't going to be exactly like Scientology. It's not going to be top down. It's going to be much flatter. It'll be much more like a peer-to-peer network almost, right? Like, yeah, it's like that book, the essay, The Cathedral and the Bazaar, right? The Scientology is like the cathedral, but a conspiracy community is more like the bazaar, even though both have methods of like control, in group language, ways of talking about the out group. Those things are all there, but there's not necessarily somebody at the top, and there's not necessarily like in a, you know, something like QAnon, or maybe to keep it simple, something like the chemtrails. There's not like an overtly religious belief system there like we generally associate with cults. So like this person over here on the right, I'm going to have to maybe take a look at some of her stuff like off air. But I'm not thinking that she's going to have like good analysis of cults and control groups on her stuff. I think it's like an anti-woke. I think it's like probably, and I'm just guessing based on what I've seen here, that it's just an anti-woke channel with like almost like a cottagecore vibe or something like that. But again, this is just first impression, so I don't know for sure. But like this is, you know, it's very much like that video we watched of Chris Shelton, that guy who used to be at Scientology, on trigonometry, when he just described the entire push for social justice as a cult. It's like a really shallow analysis that, and I'm guessing it doesn't ever go into specifics, so that then the people that are watching who agree with her can kind of fill in the blanks, maybe with their own specifics. We'll see.
Elizabeth, here, watch this video. It's going to help you wake up. And it's some lady going, "You're stupid." No, that's not going to help.
Yeah. No, that's a really good point. I mean, that's kind of exactly it. When you hear the people who come from they're more grounded in this. They've been, you know, it's interesting. Like I feel like something I've said and I've thought is that I'm older than a lot of the people who were indoctrinated into the woke ideology. So I missed out on that. I feel like
indoctrinated into the woke ideology.
Educational foray.
Yeah, another thing going on here is she's just taking away people's agencies to form their own beliefs, right?
Yep. Yeah, you can't just, you know, agree with someone who doesn't agree with her. You have to be indoctrinated by them.
Right. It's like it has no, by this logic, it has no origin point, right? Because nobody actually thinks this. You know, so crazy. Like I like, you know, I'll probably say things like, how could anybody possibly believe that? But I mean, I don't really mean that I don't believe people believe the things that are coming out of their fucking mouths. It's just baffling to me how they could believe that, which is a lot different than denying them their agency that they came up with this, or that they've chosen to agree with this all on their own. Like,
yeah.
So this is absolutely like devoid of any actual analysis so far. Mind you, we're only 10 minutes in. Maybe the deep analysis comes later, or maybe it's paywalled.
Prior to going back to graduate school had been in the early 2000s. So, 2010, I left a law school program, and then I didn't go to school for 9 years, and I went back to school into a graduate program in 2019, and I was like, wow, this is all different. This woke ideology was very blatant. It was very upfront and unabashed. And I'd been in a psychology undergrad, a clinical psych undergrad, where I'd taken some classes with the master's program prior. And this was totally different. It was a complete focus on anti-racist ideology, on intersectionality, on the gender stuff in a way that I'd never heard before. And I did gender.
Wait, is anti-racist ideology, is that bad?
Well,
if you're going into law, should you be a racist?
well, she was saying this is a psychology program that she's been in.
Okay. If you're going into psychology, should you be a racist?
Here's the thing.
I would argue there are things that your racism won't affect. Like if you're going to be like a welder, if you're a racist, you probably won't have much of an effect, if any,
on the
your welding career.
Maybe on the welding itself, but on your career it probably will, because
Yeah, true.
you don't like weld. People don't weld in like a cave in the woods by themselves usually,
Yeah, true. But yeah, like if you're going to be a psychologist, yeah, you shouldn't be racist.
But like also I think I don't believe her. That's the other thing. Like I think she may I don't think she's lying, but I don't believe her. Do you know what I'm saying? I think that either she changed or she went to a different school, maybe a different university, or she went into a different part of psychology where these things are more like centered, right? I think something changed, because academia does not change at the rate she's claiming it does. By its very nature, it cannot. It's like a barge.
The most likely explanation, I would think, and I'm not saying this is the explanation, I'm just saying, in my opinion, it's probably the most likely, is that her experiences were roughly the same objectively in these places, but she didn't notice all of what she would describe as wokeness back in 2010 because she wasn't like primed for it by right-wing ideology, like by the right-wing ecosystem, the right-wing media ecosystem telling you like you need to look out for like anytime anyone mentions race, that's woke.
Right.
So like if someone had mentioned race in 2010, she wouldn't have viewed it as, oh, that they're pushing wokeness on me. Whereas, the classes were probably roughly the same in 2019. It's just now she's viewing every single time they mention race or gender or, I don't know, any sort of discrimination, like she's viewing that as wokeness and them pushing wokeness on her.
Right. I think you're saying she got YouTube brain.
Yeah. That seems like the most likely explanation to her experience. Because I don't think that her experience is untrue. I don't think she's being, like you said, I don't think she's lying about her experience. I just think she's wrong. That makes sense, right?
Right. You don't have to lie to be wrong.
Yeah, exactly.
The other thing is, this could just all be bullshit. I mean, why did she? She says I was in. She seems to have dropped out twice, which is fine. Like whatever. Fucking university's not for everybody. I'm not saying shit about that, right? But she may have done poorly in some aspect and needed someone to blame, and so she's going to blame wokeness. When in reality, like she seems like a smart enough lady or whatever. Maybe she's in the wrong program. Maybe she went to a school where she wasn't getting along with her peers because of the age gap. Maybe she went in there older and thought she was better than the fucking young people there and people didn't like her. I mean, there's any number of things that could have happened here. I think maybe she went in there thinking she was better than them because she's older than them, because she sure seems to not like them. Right. Like,
no.
But again, this is just really, it's really hard to know what was going on. And it seems like the, even in 2019, maybe even more so than now, this woke ideology, which is, before that they were calling it SJW. Before that, it was you were too politically correct. It seems like this is a scapegoat when people like just don't like the environment they're in or whatever, because their views aren't accepted by the the institutions, or their views aren't taught by the institution. And I don't know how far left like psychology tends to lean in the universities, but you know, who fucking knows? Who fucking knows? I would love to have her on to drill down into this stuff with her, but the other side is I don't want to do that. Because I don't like being lied to. So yeah.
Like a psychology of gender course, which wasn't woke, you know?
Wait, so when was that? What time period?
Oh, that would have been, I graduated my undergrad in 2008. So it would have been in the mid 2000s.
Oh, wow. So that's weird because I was getting it and I graduated my undergrad in 2000. I'm older than you.
Did people even say woke in 2010?
I think back then was SJW.
Okay. So like, yeah, it wouldn't have been woke because no one was saying woke.
Well, the second lady said she graduated in 2000, which would have been, at that time, it would have been, they're too politically correct, right? Like, there's always a version of this.
Yep.
Not because I was a later student. I'm 47. No, 40. Yeah, I'm 47. I have to think about it.
She's the same age as I
I
am.
think I am too. No,
you have to think about it too.
I joke 'cause I have to think about it. I think I'm 45.
Okay. See, yeah. So that builds into my point really well because I feel
So she was in her 40s when she went back to a university. That's going to be pretty hard. I think it's going to be hard to fit in, just more broadly, right? Like I think I wouldn't have a hard time fitting in based on my values or whatever. And I'm into music and stuff, but I'd have a hard time fitting in at a university trying to make friends there because who wants to hang out with the old guy?
Yep.
Like it's
you're surrounded by like 20 somethings.
Yeah, some people as low as 17 or 18.
And like you're probably going to be friends with the professors because like
that's inappropriate. That's like not well. You could be friends with. I suppose you could be friends with the professor whose class isn't yours. But yeah, like that's a fraught with problems too. So like you're if you go back, you find if you're not gonna you would be able to find some students in your age group, but you're gonna be probably pretty lonely. I think in your 40s going back to university, if it's like a place where there's a campus culture. There are also universities where they're like community or commuter schools, right? Where most people commute in. Mm-hmm. Cal State East Bay is primarily a commuter school, right? There's not a big campus culture there. So that's probably a lot easier for like people that are, not what we call college age. But I wonder if she went to a place where there was like a lot of young people in a campus culture and she didn't fit in.
Yeah, I don't know.
Doesn't woke. But then there are people who say they've been seeing this coming since the 70s. They've been seeing this coming. They definitely saw it in the 80s. They have this different perspective where they've watched this indoctrination happen and they can point.
But those people are just Eric Weinstein.
That I would have thought were perfectly normal in my own childhood, where I was actually being, from their perspective, indoctrinated into this in kind of a slow boil process. And so it's just some people feel like they're very steeped in this and very aware of it and very grounded in this. And they're impatient with other people who haven't seen it yet. And I think that that's kind of the thing that you're speaking to really well. It's easy for those of us who feel confident in our, I guess, viewpoint on this to be sort of self-congratulatory and frustrated with other people who are still perpetuating the process. And like you said, it's not helpful, not necessarily helpful if what you're trying to do is talk to them.
And I encountered this at the beginning when I first started on my old show, this attitude from some people, and I never got it. I talked about it then. I'm like, some people have an attitude of, you're late to the party. Mm. Like I was at the party.
Oh no, anti-woke hipsters must be the worst. Oh no. It's like the person.
I've been an insufferable asshole for 20 years. Where have you been?
It's like the person who, like, when you first, like, you're like, oh shit, maybe that would be pretty cool to collect vinyl. Then you go over to this guy's house and he's like, I have all the vinyl. I am vinyl. Except for these people, it's like I've, it's like I've been mad at trans people before it was even an issue. Like I hated Ibram X. Kendi before he was even born. Like
my heart has been filled with hate for my entire life. Where have you been?
Postmodern Prometheus. Real hipsters use the N-word.
You had to learn to hate. I was born to hate.
I am hate. It's like that guy you asked, do you party? And he's like, I am the party.
In 1980 or whatever, they're so hostile to new people showing up to the party.
Mhm.
And I imagine they're the type, I'm using a party analogy because I imagine they're the type that would do that.
I'm using a party analogy because I've once been to one. Now I don't get invited anymore for whatever reason. It's probably because of wokeness. I was not getting invited to parties way before you were not getting invited to parties. My neighbors all hated me way before you even moved here.
Dinner party, if you get there late, they're like, you're late, you can't come in or whatever. It's like,
Yeah.
I'm just like, come to the party.
I thought you were supposed to show up 5 or 10. I thought you were supposed to show up fashionably late to a party.
Who says you're late, you can't come in? What?
Like, yeah, if you
Like
show up.
maybe if you're like there after the party is over, like if you show up at 2 a.m. and like the hosts are already in bed. What are you doing here? It's 2 a.m. Go home.
I know I'm 5 hours late. You're like, 6, actually 6 hours late. Dinner was served at 9, but we are asking people to show up at 8. Well, yeah, you show up like a little late to the party that you're like, oh, I'm sorry, I'm late. And if you're at a party where the person invited you, they're like, oh, that's fine. I'm glad you could make it. They're like, yeah, you're like, yeah, I had to work a little late. They're like, oh, that sucks. It's Friday night. You have to work, and then maybe you even spark up a conversation about how it sucks that you have to work late on a Friday night. And then fucking people start commiserating over being late to shit sometimes because of work or your kids or whatever, like at an adult party. They don't go, you're late, don't come in.
At least not to normal people. Maybe they just didn't want her at the party.
Right. If I know somebody's running late and I like have a dinner party, I'm like, shit, there's not enough booze. Oh, fuck. That's right. Fucking, Jenny or whoever. She's not here. She's always running late. Somebody call Jenny and tell her to pick up some fucking beer. You can do the beer run.
I don't care what time you get here.
Yeah.
And it, for me, I think it's, when I look at that, it's a really dangerous human, it's one of the dark sides of human nature to be just unkind to people because they didn't figure something out as soon as you did. And it's also, it's got so much resentment in it. It's got so much arrogance in it. It has so much, just all the things I hate. It's got that sort of, like for me, it belies that your true goals are not actually waking people up.
Mm-hmm.
They may have started off, that's what you wanted to do, is to help people see your point of view and to help people come around to your point of view. Maybe that's how you started, right?
Mm-hmm.
But
This is also like, you ever heard that idea of the zealotry of the recent convert? That's kind of what's going on here too, I think. Although I'm not sure what they're converted to, because so far what I've gotten is, 1, people need to wake up, which reminds me of something. 2, I guess anti-woke hipsters are a bigger pain in the ass than we knew. Who would have guessed? Like, that's all we've gotten out of this so far.
Plus, school is woke because gender. Right?
at some point, something else became more important to you without you realizing it. And I would say that that's your ego, your fragile ego, like some sort of fragile narcissism, that sort of, but I got here first and I need to be acknowledged and I need to be.
Ooh, I do that, but that's because I'm always right. Because I'm always right. Like, you know, I talk about this sometimes, but people, like, when we started the podcast, they're like, why are you talking about this conspiracy stuff instead of the news? I'm like, yo, this is the news, actually. You just don't know it yet. This is going to be a fucking problem. Oh, shit, I was right. I guess I'm a fucking hipster. I got here first. It's Dave and the media went to do this before everybody else. I'm the person she's talking about, actually. So far, the only way in which I feel attacked is in this way. She doesn't like people who do that. But I don't not let people come to my party because of that.
You kick people out.
Like, you didn't know about
the party
chemtrails.
started at 8. It's 8:05. You are not welcome in.
To be fair, if my show starts at 8 and somebody shows up at 8:05 and the lights are white, yeah, they're actually not invited in. They come in when the lights turn red. Ah, shit, I'm that person again.
Are you implying that your show is a party?
Not when sometimes when the lights are red. Actually, we do throw parties now. We're throwing one tomorrow night.
People need to worship me or really listen to me or really pay attention to me because I figured this out way before they did. And it's, I can't stand anything about that because it turns people off. And
really, then why do you have a show?
The based world. I've seen that in other.
Yeah, she's trying to wake up, but she's not going to lord it over them. I don't understand what are they talking about?
Like a person who runs a show about trying to move people away from the quote woke left unquote, saying I don't think people should pay attention to me. I don't like it when people people should pay attention to them.
You're just wrong. No. I think you were probably so busy thinking about what you were going to say next that you missed her point. She's still talking about.
Go back.
She's still talking. No, she's still. I promise you, she's still complaining about the anti-woke hipsters who are like trying to lord it over people that they were an asshole in the 80s or whatever. That's
yes, and she's saying she hates it when people say, like you should pay attention to me. But like, what is having your own show about it other than you saying you should pay attention to me, right? So like that is what she's doing.
Right, but her I'll repeat myself. She's still talking about the people who were there first. She's saying that they are suggesting that they should be paid attention to more because they were there first. Which I don't think is even happening. I don't think she's being gatekept by some guy who was telling anti-gay jokes in the 80s, right? Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, she's not being gatekept by the dude who Andrew Dice Clay was doing a parody of.
Other belief systems or other, communities, whatever you want to call it. I've seen some people claim to be Christians who are like that, who are so unkind and so judgmental and almost resentful of new Christians, I've known Jesus for my whole life. You just, it's like, oh gosh, what are you doing? You're not living it very well. And the same with us, so-called anti-woke or base people. If you're like that, if you're just turning people away, it's like, what's your point even? You're a great recruiter for the other side. You're a great recruiter for saying, kicking people out.
There is some chance that people just don't like her. And it really doesn't have anything to do with the way that maybe they don't treat everyone this way. Maybe people just don't like her. I mean, she seems likable enough. Like I wouldn't, at a party, she seems like, again, we're back to a party. She seems like she'd be fine at a party, right?
As long as she doesn't get into her beliefs. And I feel like she might be the kind of person who would bring up her beliefs unprovoked.
Possibly, but I mean, after a few drinks, I'm that kind of person too.
Fair enough.
I just think she'd bring weed. That's what I'm saying. And then I'd tell her I've been smoking weed since before you even heard of it.
Over to some place that will
accept
them or welcome them. It's counterintuitive to me. I don't like it.
No, it sort of ties right back into what you were saying about values versus ideology. And I think that's something that
does it?
When I think about that, I think of process versus content or form versus substance. And like, what is, for instance, with the woke stuff, with anti-racism, the content is we're concerned about different treatment and outcomes for different racial groups. We're concerned about racial disparity. And we don't think that's right. We want people to have better opportunities across racial categories. Maybe that's the content. We could just, if we're being really charitable and reading
If we're
them.
being really charitable. The point of not being anti-racist is that we think people are racist and it produces bad outcomes. But that's the charitable interpretation, HK.
Yeah, if we're being extremely charitable, we'll just believe that what they're saying is what they believe. I guess we won't assume that they have extremely nefarious intent because we're being so charitable.
And by the way, that's she's actually not describing anti-racism. She's just describing like being not racist, right?
Yep. No.
She's anti-racism is what you do after you figure that out. It's the steps you take after that to try to combat racism in whatever way you can. She's at the point where people are like, "Oh, it looks bad."
Yep.
Gentle way possible. But then the process that they use in order to enforce this anti-racist ideology, which says, I don't like that you treat people badly based on race because that belies the content of their humanity. So we're going to treat you differently based on race. And
wait, what? No, we're going to wait. What? Wait, no,
I'm sorry. What? What?
Oh no! Oh no!
When has that ever happened?
This is like a joke. It's a joke that a friend of mine used to say. He's like, you got to be racist if you notice that people are racist because you're noticing people are different races. He was clearly joking, right? But that's just a version of that, right? They're not, lady. They're not. Nobody cares that you're white, lady. It's fine. Some of my best friends are, white.
I think what she's trying to say is that she's against affirmative action.
Possibly, or
she's trying to say that a black person shouldn't have an advantage over her, everything else being perfectly equal.
But it's the everything else being perfectly
like, okay, so you think you should have an advantage over them?
It's the everything else being perfectly equal part that I disagree with, though, because it isn't. She's like a pretty white lady. Like you know what I'm saying? Like the privilege isn't just her whiteness. She's like a pretty white, a pretty slim white lady who, and I assume and I don't know, but I assume she's probably heterosexual or mostly heterosexual. You know what I'm saying? Like she's got some shit going for her, is what I'm saying. Like that is like distinct from just anything she's ever done, right? She just kind of won the lottery when she was born in a lot of ways. Even if let's say she wasn't born into money, because I don't know who she is, right? I know nothing about her. But just she's got like all these advantages based on the things we've constructed in our society. And she's like, well, I don't want anybody not liking me because I'm white. And I'm like, I don't think that happens to you. I'm pretty sure that some white people do just fine, is what I'm saying. Sometimes white people do just fine.
Yes. Yeah, but I do think that she's specifically talking about affirmative action, and she's just really like straw manning what affirmative action is.
It becomes this really like snake eating its tail sort of process that undermines the content.
I prefer the bad analogy of a self-licking ice cream cone.
Absolutely. If we're going to get into, fundamentally what's wrong with woke or social justice. And that's one of the most basic things is that it doesn't even abide by its own stated principles. So as an ideology, as a belief system, it does have these stated, tenets of belief, these stated principles. And one of them, which is a good one to have, is racism is wrong. It's wrong to treat people differently on the basis of race. We want to end racism. That's how they get a lot of well-meaning people attracted to it. People who want to do good, especially young women, get pulled into it because they want to do good and they believe it's what it says it is. Like this is about ending racism or sexism or homophobia, etc. But then it tells you, and this is where principles is so important, because if you don't have a principle, you'll go wherever the ideology pushes you. And so then it tells you, okay, now in order to do that, in order to end racism, in order to stop treating people differently on the basis of race, we're going to have to treat people differently on the basis of race.
So they're conflating racism with individual acts of discrimination. People do that all the time. Racism is structural. Discrimination is personal and individual. Yes, actually, if you're going to change a racist system, somebody's got to put their thumb on the other side of that fucking scale. I'm sorry. How else do you fucking change it? It's like, well, you know, we want the car to be going 30 miles an hour, but we don't really want to have to use the brakes or friction and basically any method by which you would reduce the speed of something from 40 to 30 miles an hour, because that's just discrimination against the 40 mile an hour speed. It's like, yo, yeah, I guess, I mean, if you want to talk about it that way, yeah, you got to put your thumb on the scale on the other side. Like, what the fuck else are you going to do?
Yeah. Yeah. So like you were saying, there is structural racism, and to solve structural racism, you might have to treat individuals differently based on their race.
In some circumstances, in like limited circumstances, sure, I suppose. You know what I'm saying? It gets real muddy though, because it's like it's the conflation of the system and the individual, where where you just like, you can't make that. It's, if you make that comparison in this way, you end up going down a rabbit hole, because it's some of it's counterintuitive, and it's not necessarily going to be to the disadvantage actually of the people at the top of the layer cake or whatever, because the down the road, maybe there's a more equitable society, and there's like going to be less like strife in your society, and so that's good for everyone. So it's like, I don't know, I'm kind of, I think the thing we're struggling with here is that these people are not saying what they mean, because they're not saying anything. I think
again, they're just bashing on affirmative action, but what they're missing is that the idea behind affirmative action is that if you are a minority, that inherently makes it harder for you systemically, you know, to within the system of the United States, within the system we've set up, it makes it harder for you to achieve a goal in academia that someone else who is not that minority, than someone else who is not that minority would be to achieve that goal. You know what I mean?
I mean, like, I would just add
it is harder for you because you're a minority than for someone who wouldn't be that minority.
I would just say that it tends to do that. It won't do that in all cases, but it will tend to do that.
Yeah, I mean, I'm talking hypothetically in this case where everything else is perfectly equal, which doesn't happen in reality.
But don't worry, and this is where the cult programming comes in. Don't worry, it's not racism because we've redefined racism. Here's the new definition. So technically, you don't have to worry because this is just prejudice. It's not prejudice plus power. Mm-hmm. But
that's not. Wait, she has no idea what. First of all, no. She's not. This has nothing to do with like cult and control group programming. I mean, there's a way in which language is controlled, but this is a shit example. I don't want to spend a lot of time on this because like I just don't want to spend. This is not a great example. She could have come up with the love bombing. She could have maybe made that argument. She's like, oh, we're just redefining this word. Well, no, they're racism. The way I think about it is different than discrimination, because I think racism is the structure and the discrimination is on the individual level. I don't think that like we're redefining words. I think we're being more specific. I think racism is different than a person being a racist. I think racism is an ideology and a system, whereas a person being racist is just a person who discriminates, a bigot, and that's different. I'm, and again, I think one of the things I'm struggling with here is they're really not saying a lot. It's all kind of like meta analysis, but the problem is there's no analysis for them to be analyzing, I guess. It's a meta analysis of nothing almost, if that makes like sense here. And it's interesting again that she's talking about like cult and control group dynamics to the extent that she's even said anything about it, because they're definitely talking to their in group and using the lingo of the in group here. 100%.
And this is it's for a good end goal of ending racism, right? Now, if you don't have that principle already laid out in your life where you say, no, this is inflexible. You don't treat people differently on the basis of race. That's wrong. If you don't have that principle, you'll go where the ideology pulls you. And if it pulls you to a place that turns,
well, that just means that like you are okay with the results of historical systemic racism, right? Wouldn't that be what that means?
This is another one that people are going to be like, well, Dave's going to do the thing. This is this is like a very neoliberal way to look at the world. This is well, I don't like racism and I have, fixed myself and I have the principle and it's just to the exclusion of systemic analysis. Again, it's like it's sometimes a way that conspiracy driven activist communities work. It's about waking up the individual, not changing the system. And so this is rampant in like shitty yoga communities where they're like, oh, we don't really do politics here. Just get right with yourself and with the universe and everything will be just fine. It's a version of that. And it's like, it's to the exclusion of any analysis of the system, any analysis of what pressures and what burdens are being put on people and what benefits people have as a result of the system.
Mm-hmm.
It's pretty slippery and manipulative thing that I don't think most people know that they're doing it when they're doing it. But yeah, it's this very like individualistic, it's a very American way to look at the world. If you think about it, we're supposed to be a nation of rugged individuals and all that shit, right? So this is a very American way to look at the world. And yeah, I put somebody in chat was like, "Oh, Dave's doing the thing." Yeah, it's a thing. I stole it from the Conspirituality guys and in some part from Naomi Klein. Sorry, can't sing no song that ain't been sung before.
Social justice, whatever you want to call it, it pulls you to a place where it gets you to behave in exactly the opposite way of what it is you think you're doing.
Mm-hmm.
That's why I call it evil, because it takes these well-intentioned people, a lot of times young people or young women, and it turns them into foot soldiers for the very thing they think they're fighting.
Mm-hmm.
How evil is that? Mm-hmm. You're out there in the streets. Sometimes I look at, young people at these, at any kind of woke protest, really, around any of these identity categories. And I know that they think they're...
Wait, a woke protest around an identity category? Does she mean like the gay rights movement? Is that a woke protest?
I think yes.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. I mean, I think we won somehow with this bad tactic that made us, I suppose, abandon our principles. But we won to some extent. Things are getting bad again, but we got gay marriage and shit. You got to get it. We'll take the W there, I suppose. In the cities, even in the cities in what we call red states, people are a lot more accepting of gay people. Even Republicans, when polled, are more accepting of like cis gay people. And it sort of depends on how heteronormative presenting they are, I think. You know what I mean? But how does she think all this stuff changed? Like, did people just rely on their first principles and change their minds? They're like, oh, well, again, it's the individual. She's like, oh, we all need to have our first principles. This is this idea of deontology versus consequentialism. It's like, well, if I just apply my first principles, and I'm like, well, what if your first principles are flawed? What if your first principles make a lot of fucking dumb assumptions? Like how did your first principles come to you from on high, or did you come up with them yourself? And if you came up with them yourself, then how are they distinct from your ideology?
Yeah.
Wow. This is like one of the most stark examples of one of the things that I've been thinking about, maybe kind of a lot the last 6 months. I think it's pretty. I wouldn't say I'm shocked, but I'm a little surprised it came up here, because this usually doesn't come up here. But here we are.
Good. They think they're out there doing good. I'm out here ending racism or sexism or homophobia, right? And it's like, how evil is it that person is a puppet for the very thing they think they're opposing?
Wait, what?
Oh, yeah, it really is.
First of all, I don't think people that are out there like protesting, like for example, if they think the police department's racist, I don't think they're out there protesting thinking, well, shit, I'm going to end racism. I don't think that's what people think. I don't think people are so delusional. They think they're just going to go to some protests and end racism. I think the people at the protest, you may ask 10 different people and kind of get 10 different responses or whatever. But I think like the overall idea maybe of a protest is to just like try to get a particular thing to change so that things just get a little bit better in your community. Probably get a cop fired who's fucking shooting people, or get the police chief fired because they're covering up for the fucking cops that are shooting people, or who knows, you know what I'm saying there. I don't think the people that are there, even like the very young people, I don't think they're so naive that they think they're just going to end racism. I feel like people are kind of aware of the water they're swimming in, and that you can't just you're not going to get the river to start flowing the other way just by protesting. I think people are generally smarter than she's giving them credit for.
And the people that do think that they're going to go out there and protest and end racism, like, that's not a bad goal. It's naive, but it's not bad.
That's really a good point. And I think it's easy to forget, because I think that this process of anger and resentment, it breeds more of itself. And as you see somebody who's like the classic libs of TikTok video of this person who's just belligerently, smugly, arrogantly pushing something that you think is false and stupid on.
Wait, belligerent and smug are almost smug is the opposite of belligerent generally. You're not belligerent and smug at the same time.
Also, the classic libs of TikTok video.
Yeah, that's usually just her like going up to, but not necessarily calling somebody the F word, essentially. Like, it's like some teacher with blue hair and a rainbow flag in their class talking about how they're nice to their queer students. And now the mask is off, by the way. Somebody in chat just said that. Now the mask is off for this lady. She's a fan of libs of TikTok. Like, you could be concerned with the excesses of what these people call identity politics, and and then recognize that libs of TikTok is doing a very insidious version of identity politics.
Yep, doing a fascism.
Yes, doing a hate.
The viewer, it breeds that same response in the viewer, and it becomes this like feeding frenzy. Yes. It feels like the anger just begets more anger. And so it's hard to remember that sometimes, to remember to look at them as just people who really have gotten into this because they wanted to uphold something that they thought was important.
Right. Well, since you mentioned that kind of person, like on Libs of TikTok, the kind that we often see is belligerent and angry, and I've seen this people in real life at protests. I will add this caveat. I don't think everyone in social justice or woke has good intentions or is a good person or, you know, however you want to phrase it. I remember watching this video, Brett Weinstein's, early on. It was...
Told you, YouTube brain.
Yeah. Wow.
Maybe 2017 or 18. It was around the time I was starting to leave the woke world. And figure things out.
Mm.
And it was called something about the magic trick was the name of it. It's been a while since I've watched it, but in it, he talked about the two different kinds of, I don't think he used the term social justice warrior. Maybe he did, but I viewed it as that's what he's talking about.
Mhm.
The two different kinds of personalities or people in this sort of movement of a bad ideology.
Mhm.
And he said there are the useful tools, and then there are the bad actors. And the useful tools, the way I view it, they're the naive people. They are often well-intentioned. They can start to go bad. The longer you're in a bad ideology, you can just become a bad actor. You can, because I think it changes you as a person over time. But there are people in it who are useful tools, and I do think of those people as naive and well-intentioned, and those are the people I try to reach. The bad actors, they know what it is, and they don't actually. They're not.
Wait a minute.
not in it
She's like, I found the group of people that I think are easy to manipulate. Now I'm going to try to manipulate them. I think that's what she's saying. She's also, this is like, this is the idea of a useful idiot, essentially.
Yeah. Also, like, so she's saying there are only two people, or I guess she's quoting Brett Weinstein saying there are only two kinds of people on the left: the people who are naive but well-intentioned, and the people who have malicious intent. So there's no one that could know exactly what they're doing and think that what they're doing is right? Or would they just be the naive ones then?
I think that's the naive ones. Again, this is like,
okay, so if you disagree with me, if you know that you disagree with me, you're malicious, but if you don't know that you disagree with me, you're naive? Is that what I'm understanding? I'm confused here. Which one are we? Are we malicious or naive?
Oh, malicious.
Okay.
Oh,
did I know I was malicious? Do I know what I'm doing?
What is the tagline of your podcast? What does it say under the name?
All right, fair enough.
But again, this is just so they're saying that there's a group of bad actors who have agency. And then there's another group of people who doesn't. So they're taking away. They're like just trying to suggest that like a good number of the people that don't agree with them just had their agency taken away from them or never had any to begin with. And this is absolutely just, it's a very arrogant and it's a very arrogant way to kind of view people who don't share your views. They're like, oh, they don't know what they're doing. And I mean, that's fine if somebody's like 6 or 7. They're like, oh, they don't know what they're doing. They're just a kid. Yeah, that's fine. But these are like, by the time somebody's like at a university or whatever, I think that generally they're going to have, by the time somebody's like 18 or 20 or something, they're going to have a pretty good idea what the fuck they're doing. Like,
yeah.
They sincerely believe that this ideology is going to end racism and sexism and they want to do good. Like, no, they're in it because they want power, money, or fame. They're using it. They know exactly what it is, or they don't care. They don't care about ending oppression. They just want to be the ones.
I'm sorry. If you want like power, money, and fame, being a leftist is the wrong path.
Maybe she might be trying to say that it like would make them popular. I guess. I just find it interesting. This is all very interesting to me. Not because they're saying anything. It's just the the way that they phrase everything and stuff. It's really interesting that she claims to be like interested in stopping like cults. She first was complaining that the other anti-woke people aren't even love bombing her, which is weird. You would not want that, but I guess she does. And I think that's this is, I don't know. It's we're at an hour and 26 minutes. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna stop watching this all right, frustrating thing here. Man, they didn't.
But if I'll give a little bit of advice. If you're after power, money, and fame, just cozy up to a right-wing billionaire and then tell them like, "Hey, you give me millions of dollars, and I'll go on. I'll create a new right-wing media channel that'll funnel people into exactly your beliefs.
So I think it's hard to get famous by doing that too. I think that's sort of the luck of the draw, because not everybody can pull that off. I I do, I see a lot of people, and it's not just these people talking about wokeness or whatever, but it's also people sort of who are that cover similar stuff that I do that are real quick to compare everything to a cult, right? And I think it's you if you oversample for that, you're going to end up sounding stupid a lot of the time. If you're going to talk about this stuff and talk about, the tactics that cults and control groups use, you need to be real specific about which tactic you're talking about and who's doing it and how. Because you just start like, oh, this is like a cult. It's like a cult ideology. It's like a cult ideology. This is like a cult. It's like, you're like, now a cult. Now you don't even mean anything. Now you're not saying fucking shit, right? You're not saying nothing. Now you're just, everything I don't like is a cult. And it's like, well, no. We talk about, you could just say you don't like them or you think they're wrong. Like you start calling everything a cult, and now nothing's a cult, right? Like it's like if everybody's famous, no one's famous or whatever. If everybody's rich, no one's rich. Well, that might, I don't believe that because I don't believe in money really. But like it's a lot of people are starting to oversample for it, and I don't want this lady. I don't want the lady on the right. I do not want her to find, like, if the worst thing in the world for her right now would be to find the anti-Scientology community. Because then she would like literally think she's a fucking expert because she listens to a bunch of dumb fucks who got out of a cult, never did the work to like, heal their trauma, and instead decided to just be a cult expert. And so like, I'm just, maybe I'm even guilty of not, kind of poking people like, oh, I mean, I poke plenty of people, but that's different. Maybe I'm guilty. I'm guilty of not reaching out to people like when they start comparing stuff to a cult, like in private, and being like, hey, if you want to make this comparison, I think it's important that you draw, specific parallels between specific kinds of behavior instead of like overgeneralizing like this. I wouldn't bother with the lady on the right because I think she's just trying to grift. I think the lady on the right be trying to grift. I get the impression that the lady the thing she used where one person is just naive. I think the one on the left is just naive, and I think the one on the right's a grifter. I think if we were going to separate them into their two kinds of people, that's just vibes based though. I don't know anything about either of these people. I just know that their analysis was, again, I was going to say a mile wide and an inch deep, but it's not even a mile wide. I don't even know what the fuck. If somebody had to ask me to summarize what we just watched, I'd be like, I don't know. I think they were glad that they were having the conversation, and the lady on the left, or one of the one, well, now they're interchangeable again. One of them didn't get invited to parties.
I would say, like, I don't ascribe to that idea of there's only two kinds of people on each side. Like, I don't think either of them are grifters. And I don't think either of them are naive either. I think they know what they're doing. And I think their values are horrible. And that's, they're trying to spread their horrible values. Like, they would disagree that their values are horrible. But, to me, this idea of like, we must protect the status quo can't be racist. That maybe that's not exactly how they would put their values, but that's how I see their values playing out in the kinds of policies that the thing that they're doing leads to.
Fair enough. I was just trying to use their model. I don't know if I believe the thing I just said or not. That's because I've entered the marketplace of ideas in bad faith. And I'm here to take people out of context and just rudely insult people. Yeah, that was bullshit. But I think we're gonna have to take another look at that channel, and I think we may be delving into some weird Gamergate like incidents in the knitting community in the future. Because
knitting drama.
What I gathered from chat is that the gal on the right was part of the knitting drama. So
really,
that's what I gathered from chat. I don't know for sure. I wasn't looking that closely. That's just what I gathered. People were alluding to that in chat.
Know more.
Yeah, well, we will, but obviously, one of us has to look into that, which means I have to look into that. You want to close the show out?
All right. Thank you for tuning in. We do this show every Wednesday at 7 p.m. Pacific on twitch.tv/Echoplex Media. If you'd like to check out our other shows, you can do that at echoplexmedia.com. You can support us on Patreon at patreon.com/Echoplex, or you can support us at our store, eplex.store. If you're listening live, stick around for after the song where we turn the lights red and we keep the show going. If not, thank you for listening to the podcast. And here is Boomers by Periscope.